Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack one of the most cinematic, absolutely jaw-dropping true stories found anywhere in nature. Seriously, picture this. You're standing on the dark, damp floor of a humid tropical rainforest. There's this thick, hanging mist in the air that just clings to your skin. The light is incredibly dim, filtering through a massive, dense canopy of ancient green right above you. You can hear the sound of dripping water and distant, echoing bird calls. The scent of decaying leaves and rich earth just fills your lungs. To the naked eye, this whole environment looks like a peaceful, untouched, deeply serene paradise. But if you look down at the micro level, right on those wet leaves and damp soil beneath your boots, a terrifying biological thriller is unfolding. Today, we're diving into a real-life horror story that honestly rivals any Hollywood movie. But the craziest part is that it's entirely 100% real. This is the story of the zombie fungus. Let's step right into the dark atmospheric reality of the rainforest and meet our main characters. Section 1. The strange behavior. A carpenter ant goes rogue. Okay, so every good documentary starts with a break in the ordinary, right? And that's exactly what we're looking at here. Normally, a carpenter ant is a highly predictable, deeply social creature. I mean, it's a fiercely loyal worker. It labors tirelessly for the colony, dutifully follows these complex chemical trails, and sticks to a super rigid daily routine navigating the massive roots and terrain of the forest floor. But suddenly, something changes. The ant just starts acting erratically. It stops foraging for food. It completely ignores its siblings passing by. It abandons the bustling metropolis of its colony. It essentially goes rogue, isolating itself in this vast, dangerous world. So what turns a normal carpenter ant into a mindless zombie? Why would an insect that is biologically hardwired over millions of years to serve its colony suddenly wander off completely alone, stumbling through the misty undergrowth like it's lost its mind? What unseen force is compelling this tiny creature to abandon literally every single evolutionary survival instinct it possesses? Well, the answer isn't a larger predator swooping down from the canopy, and it isn't a disease in the traditional sense either. It's something much, much stranger. Meet our culprit, Ophiocordyceps unilateralis. Now, this is not some internet rumor or a myth. This is a fully scientifically verified fungal parasite, and its entire existence is predicated on infecting specific carpenter ants and drastically altering their behavior. Just think about the sheer evolutionary specialization required here for a second. This fungus doesn't just feed on the ant's nutrients like a normal parasite would. It literally hijacks the ant's physical actions. It turns the living insect into a biological vehicle. Imagine, just for a moment, a microscopic organism silently taking the steering wheel of a complex nervous system, completely shutting down the host's free will and driving it toward a totally different destination. We're looking at an organism that subverts life to serve its own hidden agenda. Section 2. A microscopic invasion. How the takeover begins. To really understand the sheer scale of this biological true crime, we gotta zoom way, way in. We're moving from the wide, cinematic view of the rainforest floor right down to the microscopic level, right onto the armor of the carpenter ant itself. This takeover begins with ruthless, silent efficiency. Tiny, microscopic fungal spores floating invisibly on those humid tropical air currents drift down and land, attaching themselves directly to the unsuspecting ant's body. And these spores, they don't just hitch a ride. They act like biological lockpicks. They actively secrete enzymes to penetrate the ant's tough, protective exoskeleton. They breach the fortress. And once they're inside, the fungus just begins to grow. It spreads this complex thread-like network throughout the ant's internal systems, weaving around muscles and organs. But the absolute most terrifying part? The ant is still alive. It's still walking around, still breathing, but it's now carrying this growing, spreading passenger that is slowly taking over command control from the inside out. Now, you know, pop culture loves to imagine this fungus as a conscious, evil monster maliciously controlling a tiny brain, like some supervillain with a sinister master plan. But the scientific reality is actually far more fascinating, and in a way, far more terrifying. See, the fungus is not intelligent. It is not conscious. It alters the host's behavior through purely biological, chemical, and physical processes. It secretes highly specific compounds that just interfere with the ant's nervous system and muscles. It's a blind, non-thinking organism that millions of years of evolution have shaped into an incredibly complex mechanism. It's an unfeeling biological machine designed for one singular purpose. It is biology, not sci-fi, which honestly makes the precision of this whole natural phenomenon even more awe-inspiring. Section 3. The death grip, the point of no return. So the biological takeover is now in full swing, and the host is being forced to execute its final fatal instructions. The ant is entirely lost to the fungus now. Over just a matter of days, the internal infection takes deep root. Driven by these chemical overrides, the ant leaves the absolute safety of the colony. But Here is where the behavior modification becomes truly spectacular and deeply eerie. The fungus actually compels the ant to climb. Against every terrestrial instinct the carpenter ant possesses, it begins to scale the surrounding vegetation. It marches upward, abandoning the familiar dirt and roots, moving higher and higher into the rainforest understory. It climbs up a plant, driven relentlessly by those fungal chemicals, until it reaches a very specific height and position. Then it clamps down in a final act, and shortly after, the ant dies. What exactly is this death grip? Well, it's the precise, irreversible moment the ant uses its mandibles to bite down with incredible, completely unnatural force onto a specific target, usually the prominent vein on the underside of a leaf or a sturdy twig. And it locks in. It bites down so hard, driven by fungal-induced muscle spasms, that even after the ant dies, rigor mortis sets in and it remains permanently anchored to that leaf, just dangling above the forest floor. But you might be wondering, why the underside of a leaf? Because the fungus isn't just making the ant climb randomly. No way. The fungus is incredibly precise. It forces the ant to seek out the exact temperature, the exact moisture level, and the perfect shield from direct solar radiation. The leaf's underside in this specific humid microclimate is literally the absolute perfect incubator for the next phase of the fungus's life. The living, breathing ant was ultimately just a puppet, used to transport the fungus to this exact, highly calculated location. Section 4. The cycle begins again. The fungal stalk emerges. For the ant locked in its final resting place, the story's over. But for Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, the grand finale is just beginning. The host ant dies suspended above the earth. Then, over the next several days, this incredible, almost alien-looking visual occurs. A fruiting fungal stalk actually ruptures the exoskeleton, erupting and growing directly out of the back of the dead ant's head. It stretches out into the humid air like a tiny, sinister antenna, feeding off the hollowed-out remains of its host. And once the stalk reaches maturity, the final trap is set. A bulbous capsule on the stalk bursts open, releasing a brand new, invisible shower of spores down into the misty rainforest air. Because the fungus forced the ant to climb before it died, those spores now possess the perfect high ground advantage. They rain down like microscopic landmines onto the bustling foraging trails of the forest floor, gently landing on the backs of new, unsuspecting carpenter ants marching below. And just like that, the brutal, perfect infection cycle begins all over again. So, I leave you with this. Is this a monster story, or just the complex, terrifying beauty of evolutionary biology? We started on a dark rainforest floor looking for a true crime thriller, and man, we definitely found it. A microscopic spore that breaches armor, takes over a host's nervous system, forces it to march upward into a highly specific microclimate, anchors it in a permanent death grip, and then literally sprouts from its head to bomb the next generation. It is entirely brutal, it's purely mechanical, and it is a breathtaking reminder of how endlessly inventive and chillingly precise nature can be. I really hope this explainer gave you a new appreciation for the unseen, cinematic dramas happening right beneath our feet every single day. Thanks for exploring this wild story with me today, and keep your curiosity alive.